Goodbye, New York town, goodbye, Miss Liberty. Your light of freedom will guide us across the sea. Every soldier's sweetheart bidding goodbye. Every soldier's mother drying her eye. Cheer up, we'll soon be there, singing the Yankee air. Goodbye, Broadway, hello, fans. We're 10 million strong. Goodbye, sweethearts, wives, and mothers. It won't take us long. Don't you worry while we're there. It's for you we're fighting through. So goodbye, Broadway, hello, France. We're going to swear our debt to you. Is the cry across the sea. We're united in this fight for liberty. France sent us a soldier brave at the end, whose great deeds and fame we cannot forget. Now that we have the chance, we'll pay our debt to France. Goodbye, Broadway, hello, France. We're 10 million strong. Goodbye, sweethearts, wives, and mothers. It won't take us long. Don't you worry while we're there. It's for you we're fighting through. So goodbye, Broadway, hello, France. We're going to swear our debt to you. Don't you worry while we're there. It's for you we're fighting through. So goodbye, Broadway, hello, France. We're going to swear our debt to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain speaking, Randy Wright, and I come to today's special broadcast with a heavy heart. The reason I say this is because savage Muslim barbarians targeted one of the jewels of the Western world whose long and illustrious history stretches back to antiquity. That's right, folks. What we witnessed yesterday evening in Paris, France, was a well-orchestrated, synchronized attack against everything that we value here in the West. As you all recall, we here at the Wright Flyers selected September 11th, 2015 as the launch date for our state-of-the-art radio program. We did so for a very valid and good reason. We wanted to state to the world that we would not bow down and capitulate to these Islamo-fascists who wish to thrust the Western world back into the medieval age and era to fit their backwards, twisted ideology and religion. Well, let me again reiterate that we here in the West will never bow or capitulate to the wanton demands of these extremist, violent barbarians. Yesterday evening, when they attacked the jewel of France, the city of Paris, whose history does stretch back to antiquity, in 6 separate orchestrated and synchronized attacks, they were trying to make a statement that they could destroy the West. Well, no, they cannot and they will not, and it is time that we, the citizens of our Western countries, approach our leaders and tell them to remove the mantle of political correctness, to actively name the targets who are attempting to kill us, to actively tell us who our enemies are. And once we embrace that, it becomes much easier to set a goal for absolute victory. Because let's face it, folks, these people are not going to go away. And if we continue to show weakness in the face of this adversity and their vicious, wanton, dastardly attacks, we will continue to embolden them to do even greater attacks. What we saw in Paris yesterday evening was the worst attack on French soil since the dark days of the Second World War. 150 plus people were killed by these barbarians. And yet, even after learning of this atrocious attack on our Western culture and ideology, President Barack Hussein Obama has failed to come out and say a single word about it. The reason being is that he does not want to actually address the true enemies of humanity. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen, these Muslim savage barbarians are the enemies of humanity. They don't value human life, and they believe that using such cowardly tactics will promote their agenda and make us take notice of them. Well, part of their desires have come true. We have taken notice of them, and we despise them even greater than we did before. This is a war for the very life of our customs, cultures, and ideology. These people will stop at nothing to attempt to eradicate everything that is decent about the Western world. You know, revisionist historians like to speak of the Islamic Golden Age during antiquity. Well, if there ever was an Islamic Golden Age, it has all but faded because they are bearing their fangs at the modern world, attempting to drag us back into the days of the Crusades. Well, if they want bloodshed, and if they want violence, let us show them that we are the greatest power to ever be reckoned with. The Western world has led innovation in the entire globe for the wide expanse of our long and illustrious history. The Renaissance was in the West. The great architectural achievements and artistic achievements and developments occurred in the West. These savage barbarians would kill anyone for even attempting to depict the Prophet Muhammad. In other words, they are diametrically opposed to the aesthetic values, the cultural values, the political values, and the natural law tenets that are championed by the West. And we cannot bow down and capitulate to this caliphate that is seeking an apocalyptic war with the West, because if we do, then we hand them everything they want. Like a cancer, they expect Islam to metastasize in the heart of the West, spreading to the entire body politic of every Western nation. Their entire goal is nothing short than the complete destruction and eradication of the Western world. It is now time that we in the West wake up to this reality and that we respond in kind. These savage animals will stop at nothing, so therefore let us deprive them of everything they value. Right now, right here, we here at the Wright Flyer are standing in solidarity with the French. Now, I know that France has had a long and troubled history with the United States. That being said, I do not forget the great contributions made by daring French soldiers during the American War of Independence. In World War I, they honored us when we had American boys over there flying in their escadrilles, or their basically their fighter squadrons in the Escadrille de Lafayette. That was named after the great French Marquis de Lafayette, who came to the colonies during our war for independence and fought alongside General George Washington. In fact, General Washington came to regard this young lad with such affection that he considered him the son that he could have. Therefore, in the spirit of our revolution, based on the natural law principles that form the foundation of our shared United States Constitution, we have to stand together in solidarity and unity to let these barbarians know that their twisted machinations will never come to fruition as long as we here in the United States and the rest of the Western world embrace the ideology that has guided us to lofty heights in the past. We must now turn to those socialists who empowered these Muslim barbarians and demand that they be held accountable for the destructive forces that they have unleashed upon innocent people throughout the Western world. We can no longer play softball with these people. It is time to take a stance, and we must be willing to do whatever is necessary to actively combat these destructive forces that seek nothing less than our complete annihilation. I know this is not an easy topic for a lot of people to address. It has been said that the American population has grown war weary. Well, that's not exactly true. The American population has grown tired of our fighting men and women being sacrificed in a cause where there are no clear, articulate goals, where we understand what it is that we are attempting to achieve. We must embrace our true character, spirit, heritage, and national identity. And we must also embrace the fact that we are a part of the Western world and that the entire Western world has come under a deliberate and intentional attack by these barbarians who wish to drag us back into the Dark Ages. What the caliphate in the Islamic State is attempting to say is that they will spread Islam as a cancer throughout the world, forcing all nations to bow to their will. After all, the entire impetus and meaning of the word Islam is submission to the will of Allah. But I don't believe in Allah. Allah is a false god. And these potentates and despots, these savage barbarians that have no grasp on our history, culture, or anything of value, must be wiped out. They are completely incompatible with our value system. And we see what they think of history when they go to these ancient sites in Syria and elsewhere and destroy beautiful ancient monuments that have been there for millennia. Well, it is time to put an end to their savage destruction. The forces of chaos, tyranny, and destruction should be met with like-minded force. The only thing that these savages truly understand without reservation is violence. Brute force is the only way that we will bring an end to their rampage of chaos and terror. The fact that they turn to these cowardly tactics shows that they are not worthy of being a part of this modern world. I know it is not politically correct to say this, but we have got to topple this self-destructive ideology and doctrine of political correctness. The fact of the matter is these people do not want to assimilate and be part of the West. And that brings up the problem that we have with the refugees being flooded not only into our country, but every Western nation from Syria. How do we know that these refugees have not been infiltrated by these savage barbarians like the ones who killed over 150 people in Paris, France last night? The fact of the matter is we don't know. We simply do not know who these people are. And I can almost guarantee that someone among them will have been a member of this Islamo-fascist caliphate that is hell-bent on spreading carnage and chaos all throughout the West in order to advance their wicked ideology. The fact that we have willfully closed our eyes to this has led to ever increasing numbers of attacks. Remember, this is basically the third time since last year that France has come under attack by these savage Muslim barbarians. There was the Charlie Hebdo newspaper that depicted Muhammad in a display of free speech that was attacked by savage gunmen. Then there were the Muslim gunmen that went on to the passenger train in France that, thanks to the efforts of 3 American servicemen, was finally hogtied. And now there is this deadliest attack on French soil since the dark days of World War II, orchestrated by none other than these Islamo-fascists. Everywhere we turn in the world, a troubled spot, you can almost always guarantee that Islamic forces are behind what is happening. And the fact of the matter is that no matter what we do in an attempt to appease or capitulate these people, they will only view that as a sign of weakness, and that encourages them to continue to do more of the same with greater theatrical effect. You see, ultimately, terrorism has to be based on theatrics. They thrive off of the fear and terror that they spread through their wicked ways because they believe that that is how they can get their message to the West, dictating to the West how things should be. Well, that is not how things work. And it is time that we in the West grow a backbone and stand up to these savages and let them know that no, we will not bow down to them. We will not alter our civilization and culture to fit their twisted machinations. That is the sort of resiliency that we have to show. And it has been demonstrated throughout history time and again. You know, the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker was based off of a real historical figure. His name was Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Tepes Dracula, meaning son of the devil, or in Wallachian culture, which is part of modern-day Romania, meant also son of the dragon. He was an avowed soldier against the Islamic forces. As a young boy in the 1300s, he was even sent as a hostage to the Turkish Sultan in an attempt to appease the Muslims to stop their reign of terror. In his Muslim captivity, he was exposed to great hardship and to some of the worst savage, barbaric treatment that he could have ever imagined. But it proved to be something of value to him because it taught him the way that these Islamo-fascists think. He greatly understood that the only thing that these savages respond to is raw, brute force. And therefore, when he escaped after they had murdered his brother and his father was dying, he took the reins of control in Wallachia, established his army, and killed the Turks that were there, impaling them on pikes, leading out the road to his capital, which stated to the Turks that there was a new power in charge and that it would not bow down to their bloodthirsty ways. That was the first time that the Muslims were truly fearful of the Wallachian power. It was also during the early medieval period that a great Western leader emerged named Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer. He put a stop to the raids by the Islamo-fascists into the heart of Europe. They were making such progress that they were threatening to topple the Western European capitals. Had that happened, the entire history of the West, our entire culture, would have been markedly and drastically different than it is today. We would have been under an Islamic yoke, and our championed ideals of the natural law would have withered and died on the vine. Another great example of a Western leader who started the resistance against Islam was El Cid in Spain. The Moors from Morocco were cutting a swath of terror through Spain. They had forcefully entered that kingdom and had forced their twisted view of religion upon the subjects of the various Spanish kingdoms. It was ultimately the kingdom of Aragon in 1492 that defeated these Muslim interlopers, pushing them back into Morocco. And coincidentally, those were the same royal leaders, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, that patroned and sponsored Christopher Columbus's voyage that led to the New World. So Western influence, as we understand it, is directly tied to this fight with Islam. And the Islamo-fascists are attempting once again to bring this fight directly back to our doorstep. Well, let us respond as El Cid did, as Charles Martel did, as Vlad Tepes did, and even as Napoleon Bonaparte did during his time in Egypt. The jihadists in Egypt were outraged that the French soldiers were there, and they were harassing Napoleon's forces. And Napoleon understood intrinsically that the way that you responded to these savages was to show a truly unquestionable show of strength and raw brute force. He took the male Muslims of fighting age from an entire village in Egypt, had them lined up and shot summarily. All of this sounds horrific, I know, but it has been shown time and again to work, because all of the attacks against Napoleon's supply lines and his soldiers in Egypt halted after that one display of force. Any other display by Western powers is seen as weakness by these savages. They do not respect our higher functioning of negotiation. They do not respect diplomacy. They consider that a form of cowardice, but they don't consider targeting innocent men, women, and children a cowardly act. And the reason they don't is because through their legal system, which we will cover in greater depth during our show on Sharia law and whether it is compatible with the natural law tenets contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. But anyway, through Sharia law, they view anyone who is a non-believer, especially those who follow another religion, whom they deem infidels, as to be worthless compared to those of Muslim devout followers. Indeed, they punish Muslim followers who attempt to speak out against any of these horrific tendencies on the part of the caliphate. This is why they have been so savage in their march throughout the Islamic world in the Middle East. And do not think that their reign of terror would stop in the Middle East. They wish to spread it to the West, and the attacks on Paris yesterday evening clearly demonstrates that they are doing what they think is necessary to spread their carnage and chaos to the West. Well, we must respond with brute force. Remember that France has been helping in the fight with Syria. They have been doing air missions and air raids against ISIL targets within Syria, and that has led them to be targeted by these savage barbarians. But they would have been targeted anyway, because these Islamo-fascists despise everything that the West stands for and represents, and therefore we must be resilient and vigilant against the ever-creeping threat of Islamo-fascism. Therefore, any Western culture that attempts to adopt Sharia law or any part of their twisted ideology is only asking for these sorts of horrific and horrendous attacks to be unleashed upon their innocent, decent people. We have to put a stop to this moronic ideology of political correctness, because should we fail to do so, we will only be inviting these sorts of attacks against ourselves. We should never forget what these tyrants did on 9/11. They killed over 3,000 innocent American citizens simply for the fact that they were American citizens. They did this in the name of their bloodthirsty false idol of a god, and they expect us to bow and capitulate to them, that we should submit, because remember, Islam means submission to the will of Allah. No, we should not submit to these want-to-be potentates. We should never bow down to their twisted ideology, because that is nothing short than intellectual slavery and bondage to a cruel false idol. We here in the West have always championed the ideas of liberty and freedom to a certain extent. The United States has the perfect representation of what is great about Western society, culture, philosophy, and ideology. It is seen in the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. And even though France's Constitution doesn't come near ours, and even though they departed from it during the Terror, the initial spark of the French Revolution was actually inspired by the liberty movement that gave birth to this great country of ours. They were acting in a spirit of solidarity, and we must not forget that that was actually inspired by the great natural law tenets that gave us this great country that we have. Therefore, we should not turn our back on France in this hour of need, because they stood by us during our birth. The same can be said of France during the Texas War of Independence, when the Republic of Texas came into being. The first nation to recognize them and thereby give them legitimacy was France, followed by England, and then the United States. Therefore, we here in the United States do have ties to France. France has been, at times, problematic, but ultimately, despite all of their idiosyncrasies, they are an ally. And they have been attacked by the same savage forces that attacked us on September 11th, 2001. Make no mistake about it that the Islamic world makes no distinction between any Westerner. They don't care about our Constitution. They view it as a decadent system that is out of line and incompatible with their backwards medieval philosophy. and as a result, they believe it should be eradicated from the face of the earth. When you are facing an enemy that is hell-bent on your absolute destruction, you dare not capitulate to them. You dare not show them any weakness, because if they sense blood in the water, they will go into a feeding frenzy of destruction, the likes of which this world has never seen. These proponents of death, destruction, carnage, and tyranny will stop at absolutely nothing. Look at the terror that they have unleashed in the Middle East. Look at the way that they wantonly, savagely destroy these beautiful ancient monuments, and tell me that that is not a system which cannot coexist with we, the people of the United States, or indeed any Western culture and civilization. Truth be told, there is no reasoning with those that are driven by wild religious fervor and passion. I would say religion can be reasonable. We have seen it with the Israelis. We have seen it with Western Christianity. We have seen it time and again. But what we see with Islam is a cult of death following a prophet of death, preaching a message of hatred and death. When you face that sort of twisted ideology, there can be no reason. The only thing they understand, as I said earlier, is raw, brute force. Therefore, we must stand in solidarity and unity with the people of France and say that we cannot and will not tolerate these dastardly attacks. Unfortunately, for the people of the West and for the American people, our current leadership is under Barack Hussein Obama, a man who loathes the United States and what it stands for, a man who hates everything about Western civilization and culture. He has already created this failure of a system called leading from behind. We have seen that it does not work. Remember, he drew a line in the sand with Bashar al-Assad, the leader of Syria, saying that if he used chemical weapons, we would do something. But we didn't. During the entire Arab Spring, he empowered the Muslim Brotherhood and these other various factions that gave rise to the Islamic State, the very caliphate that has organized and orchestrated these attacks, which are the worst that have been seen in France since World War II. Stop and think about that for a moment, folks. In World War II, France actually fell to the Nazis. They were devastated by the forces of fascism. Well, now we are seeing the forces of Islamofascism trying to repeat history. We are repeating history because we have not learned from our mistakes in the past. We are repeating history because we have weak leaders who think that they can appease those who have no inkling of what rationality and reason is. You cannot reason with barbarism. Barbarism is the complete antithesis of all rationality and reason, and therefore they will continue to attack irrespective of our attempts to reason with them, to negotiate with them, to speak with them. This is why the actions taken by President Obama with respect to Bo Bergdahl, releasing some of the masterminds of the 9/11 attacks for a man who is most likely a deserter, is so disastrous. This is why the idea of releasing any of the detainees at Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba is disastrous. Yet President Obama is still wed to that original promise that he made during the 2008 campaign. He does not want to give up on his radical agenda, which is detrimental not only to the United States of America, but to the Western world as a whole. We cannot and we will not tolerate these orchestrated attacks on our society. And therefore, we must come together as a people and stand up to President Obama, letting him know that we will not bow or capitulate to his twisted demands. The Western world requires that we be resolute and vigilant. But we are not seeing that from the political powers that be. These elitists think they know what's best. And look at what it has gotten us. France has suffered this attack because of their lax immigration policies with respect to these so-called refugees. Who is oppressing these refugees? All I see is oppression, terror, tyranny, death, and destruction coming from these alleged refugees. And to think that President Obama wants to unleash over 100,000 of these sorts of refugees on the continental United States, that is just asking for attacks like those that unfolded in Paris, France last evening to occur here in the United States. Think back to the fall of last year when that lone wolf terrorist inspired by the Islamic State attacked 2 New York police officers with an axe, all while screaming Allahu Akbar. You notice that they always say that God is great when they carry out these fundamentalist attacks. The reason they do that is because they believe that is what their God calls on them to do. The Quran is chock full of references of killing the infidel. Their entire system of law is built on this hierarchical scheme devised to belittle those who do not follow the tenets of Islam. That is a dangerous ideology and philosophy that we are facing. It is not based in ration or reason. It is based in blind hatred, passion, and I won't even say misguided faith. I will actually say that it is an incorrect faith, that it is a heresy, that it is a destructive force that should not be tolerated in a civilized culture. And that is what we are facing right now. Everything about what the West stands for and represents is absolutely under attack right now. These people have no love or respect for the accomplishments and achievements that we have developed. That's quite clear also from their destruction of these great and ancient historical monuments that have existed in the Middle East for thousands of years. We have seen the savagery that they have shown to the Christian population who lived in the Middle East. They have all but eradicated the Christian footprint in the Middle East. We have seen their devotion to the eradication of the Jewish state of Israel, just for the simple fact that they are Jewish and do not follow the faith of Muhammad. These Saracens are bloodthirsty barbarians wedded to an ideology that should have gone extinct over 1,000 years ago. Yet, we are still faced with their evil ideology today. We are facing their wanton chaos, their deliberate destruction, their horrific ideology today. Wherever these Islamic State fascists touch their fingers upon, we see the spread of this poisonous doctrine and ideology. Death, carnage, chaos, suffering, all follows in the wake of this Islamo-fascist ideology. And yet we in the West, blinded intentionally by the cancerous doctrine of political correctness, refuse to open our eyes to the reality of the destruction that is facing us at every corner. We gleefully open the gates to these savages who refuse to adopt our culture, to assimilate to our way of life, and who demands that we accommodate them in ways that we would not tolerate from any other culture, society, or people. When a people refuse to stand up for their national heritage, culture, spirit, and identity, then that is a sign that their country is decaying from within. Nefarious radical left-wing forces have brought this upon us, and they should be held accountable because there is blood on their hands. There is blood of the worst sort on their hands. Innocent men, women, and children have died as a result of their foolish policies, which are detrimental and destructive. Yet, in their heart of hearts, deep down, we know that they don't care. They love the idea of a savage brutality, looking for a collective mentality that would redefine a culture. In their arrogance, they think they can control these destructive warriors of the prophet of death. But they are greatly mistaken, because Islam has never been something that you can mold or shape. It has been a destructive force ever since it first came to light in the 700s. At its very inception, Islam was a religion of war. Muhammad even called himself the prophet of the sword. His entire purpose was to spread the ideology of Islam with violence. Does that sound like the sort of religion that one can reason with? That one can negotiate with? To me, that sounds like a force which is hell-bent on destruction, eradication, extermination. It is cultural genocide. These Islamic warriors are marching under the banner of absolute death and destruction. That is why the banner of ISIS is black. It is darkness. It is evil. It is truly evil incarnate, the type of warriors that have come forth and proclaimed glee in these attacks. The entire social media stratosphere came alight from those who are supporters of this ideology and from those who claimed they inspired it. The terrorists themselves made no reservations about the fact that they affiliate themselves with the Islamic State, this cancerous ideology that is threatening the sanctity of the Western world. And they are happy that they spilled the blood of over 150 innocent men, women, and children. And what crime had these innocent men, women, and children committed? Simply living the life as Westerners, not following this twisted path and religion of Muhammad. These Saracens think that they can get us back to the Middle Ages. That is their entire goal and purpose in life. They spend every waking moment obsessing over this. So why is it that our current political leaders say nothing, do nothing, and allow the floodgates to these vermin to be opened? It is because they are wedded to these radical and extremist left-wing ideologies that are cancerous and destructive for the entire Western world. It is because they loathe and despise everything that has made the Western world the leader of cultivation, culture, development, progress, you name it, because they think that it is unfair. They believe that somehow we have gone into the bowels of humanity and robbed those lesser people. The myth on the left has always been that these Islamofascists are poor, misunderstood people that are driven to radicalism from deprivation by Western cultures, that they turn their eye to the West and see a decadent culture that has forced them to live a life of poverty and dejection. Yet when you actually look at who these people are, they are not poor. Their leaders are well-educated people. The Taliban started off as a students' movement. The current leader of Al-Qaeda, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, is a physician. Look at the Palestinian leader from years ago who died back in 2004, Yasser Arafat, also a well-educated physician. These are not poor people. These are not uneducated buffoons that have been hoodwinked by a twisted interpretation of a religion. No, these are the people who are the active acolytes of the prophet of death, spreading the message as Islam had started centuries ago. And we are unable to combat it because we refuse to open our eyes to the fact that these destructive forces will stop at nothing, that they are actually devoted to the complete extermination of Western civilization, culture, and society. When you are in a fight for existence, you have to be able to meet your enemy head on. You have to be willing to use whatever force is necessary to bring it to a close. Because if you don't, they will continue to whittle away at you until the foundation becomes so compromised that the entire edifice of society collapses upon itself, and then they replace it with their twisted ideology. That is the sort of savagery that we are facing in the Western world today. These vermin, for the prophets of death and destruction, have no pity, no sympathy, no understanding, no care. Why would we even want to open our borders to these people? In fact, they resulted in the closure of the borders of France to prevent them from getting out. But the fact of the matter is, they are still there amongst the people of France. And our FBI has already come out and said that there are members of ISIS that crossed our porous southern border. But in the immediate aftermath of the dastardly attacks on Paris, France, the FBI came out and confidently said that this is no threat to the United States. How could they say that with a straight face? How do they know whether that was a threat to our society or not? We haven't even gone a full 24 hours since the time of those attacks. At least at the time of this broadcast, we have not. So I believe that any claim that this does not represent a threat to the United States is premature. In any way that you look at it also, you have to admit that what they are doing is sending a strong signal to any sleeper cells that might be in the United States to say, look, just bide your time. Let them let their guard down and then move and strike swiftly, and you will spread terror, the likes of which have not been seen since 9/11. They are committed to bringing about that type of carnage and chaos within the borders of the United States again. They are dedicated to spreading misery on a biblical scale. Because remember, they are still wedded to a medieval ideology that has no place in a modern culture or society. So we should not allow ourselves to be blinded anymore by this feckless and foolish, cancerous doctrine of political correctness. It only makes us worse off. It only makes us weaker. It only hurts us. And the fact that they feel strong enough to make these claims that they have been, to make the demands that they have been, is enough to show that none of them can be trusted. It is time to put the onus back on those who follow this religion. If there are such things as moderate Muslims, then we need them to come out and prove it. No longer will we be the ones that curtail our civil liberties to capitulate to the demands of these Islamo-fascists who are hell-bent on our destruction. No longer will we modify our culture when they refuse to assimilate to our own. That is the root of stupidity. That is what empowers them. That is what encourages them, because they view us as weak. And why wouldn't they? We are giving them everything they want. because of fear and intimidation, but worse, because of this radical extremist left-wing ideology of political correctness. We have seen the way that it poisons the minds of our students when they go out and claim that there is institutionalized racism in the United States. It has prevented us from using racial profiling to stop these savage and wanton killers from spreading their carnage in the Western world. And look at the results. Look at the results. We cannot say that we are better off thanks to the doctrine of political correctness or by trying to appease these monsters who have no concept of human decency or the value of humanity. They wish to dehumanize each and every one of us, to destroy us, to eradicate everything that we hold near and dear. Why would we even attempt to placate such vile villains? It makes no sense to me, and that is why I say that these radical extremist left-wingers are just as dangerous as these Islamo-fascists, because they march under this same idea that a collective, centralized authority is the best sort of system for all humanity. But look at the wickedness that it unleashes. Look at the terror, the carnage, the death, the destruction, the misery that it unleashes upon innocent men, women, and children. Why would anyone with any sense attempt to say that this is a good system, that these people are rational people that we can make deals with? No. We should absolutely not let them into our countries, into our cultures, into our societies, because what they are doing is threatening the very fabric of civilization. They want to thrust us back to the tribal days of the Bedouin. But we have advanced so far beyond that, that our culture has recognized the natural law tenets that gave us our fundamental and unalienable rights as contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution. Therefore, we should not give them what they want. That would be the absolute basis of madness. That would be sheer insanity. But under the stewardship of President Barack Obama, we are seeing more of the same. We are seeing an ideology that was on the brink of destruction collapse. You know, in a twist of irony, earlier in the day, before the attacks were unleashed upon the people of Paris, President Obama went before the cameras of the salivating mainstream media and said that ISIS has been contained in the Middle East. If this is containment, I don't want to know what his idea of a Muslim rampage would be, because it is quite evidently clear to me that these forces of Islamo-fascists have not been contained. They are running on the rampage, spreading their carnage and chaos throughout the Western world unimpeded. And all because the leaders in the West are weak and feckless. They refuse to grow a backbone and do whatever is necessary to ensure that the Western world remains free from this savage ideology that is based on carnage, death, and cruelty. The other thing that we can take from all of this is look at how much carnage they were able to spread because a population was not armed to defend itself. Folks, this is why we were endowed by our Creator with the fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. It was to protect us from these sorts of wanton and savage attacks, because we have the ability to take down these Muslim vermin. They had to resort to using aircraft against us. Again, going to an area where we were disallowed our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms, they were able to spread carnage at an untold level. That is the problem. Whenever you strip, encroach upon, abridge, or destroy the fundamental and unalienable rights of the citizenry, you open the door for savage attacks to undermine the entire societal fabric of not just the United States of America, but we're seeing this in the entire Western world. Why are we allowing these destructive, barbarian savages to come into our society to even have the chance to attack us? We have to wake up to the reality that is facing us as a culture and a people. We have to realize that these people do not wish to be a part of us. They wish for us to submit to their twisted machinations and ideologies. They wish for us to adhere to the same barbaric principles that they hold near and dear, that has spilled the blood of countless thousands of people all throughout the world. Why would we do that? Well, because our leadership is weak and feckless. They do not wish to appear as cold or callous or as being unaccepting of these poor, misunderstood miscreants. There's nothing misunderstood about them other than the fact that political correctness is a poisonous, self-destructive ideology that has done no good. That it has only unleashed this type of death, destruction, carnage, and chaos. And I say right here and right now, here on the Wright Flyer, that anyone who advocates the doctrine and ideology of political correctness, you have blood on your hands, because this is directly responsible to you, because your worthless, cancerous, poisonous ideology has opened the door and empowered these savage killers. You may not be directly responsible, but you certainly are a part of the problem. You need to break away from this ideology. You need to stop tying our hands behind our backs, allowing these savage killers to have carte blanche when it comes to our people, our nation, our self-defense. It is well past time that we in the West respond to these savage killers with force, that we let them know that their ideology cannot work, will not work, and shall never be tolerated in a modern, civilized society. It requires that we become vigilant, that we have a sense of self-worth and value again. Remember what we said on the first episode of the Wright Flyer that aired back on September 11th of 2015, that the entire impetus behind our natural law system and our fundamental and unalienable rights are the duties and responsibilities of self-accountability, self-responsibility, self-determination. And from that comes self-respect. When you have self-respect, you stand up to these savage barbarian killers and you let them know that no, their twisted ideology will not be accepted, that we will do whatever it takes to knock them off the face of the planet. If they want a war with us, then we should take off the gloves and fight a total war of eradication and extermination. If they want this kind of ideology, then we need to exterminate them like the vermin that they are. But again, that requires the Western leaders to have a spine. It requires them to not be blinded or held back by this foolish doctrine of political correctness. We have to once again understand that there is value in being from the West, that our society is actually superior to a society that preaches nothing but carnage, death, and destruction to a false prophet and God. A theocracy based on Islam is nothing but a destructive cult of death. Islam has been a cult of death ever since its inception, and therefore it should not be tolerated in free societies. This is why we cannot open our gates to these alleged refugees. This is why every American citizen should be writing their congressman and senator, should be showing up at the doors in Washington, D.C. to say, no, no, no. We will not bring this plague of Islamic jihad and violence into our borders. We will not subject our innocent men, women, and children to the savage beast that will arise within our country in an attempt to destroy us and kill us. Because they have already shown time and again that they will not assimilate, that they do not respect our culture, traditions, and ideology, and that they will do whatever is possible to replace us with their twisted, backwards, medieval thinking. That cannot and will not be accepted. And what Paris proves emphatically to be true is that these people will become terrorists. It's not a question of if, rather it is a question of when. And therefore, we would be insane to let these people into our country. We would be insane to not clamp down upon our southern border and make sure that we know who is coming across and that they follow the law when coming into this country. It is time to put the interests of the American citizen first and foremost, instead of bowing down to these inferior, vile, barbaric savages who are hell-bent on our complete annihilation and destruction. Folks, when you really look at it, without all of the fluffery of this political correctness that this mainstream media has been thrusting upon us, it becomes very simple to see what is necessary to bring this country back from the brink of destruction. We have to reject wholeheartedly these savage ideologies that will bring about our destruction. But will we hear anything of the like from the mouth of our current president or his regime? Because I honestly cannot call it an administration when it is not acting in the best interests of the American people. I honestly cannot say that it is a pro-American ideology, but is rather capitulating and becoming collaborative with these destructive forces of carnage and chaos. He has been so open and friendly to this cult of death that it raises open and honest questions about his allegiances. We here in the United States of America cannot stand back any longer. We cannot lead from behind. We cannot allow these Muslim savages to spread their ideology through the tactics of terrorism, through this wanton cult of death. Because if we do, then we only allow them to grow stronger and make the fight for liberty, justice, and a true sense of equality all the more difficult. Folks, they loathe and despise us. They hate everything that we represent, and they will stop at nothing to eradicate our way of being from the face of the planet. And our leadership knows and understands this, and yet they do not care. They continue to expose us to ever greater danger and harm. And if we do not become proactive, mark my words, an attack like this will strike within the heartland of the United States. They will make us remember 9/11. They will draw out these dastardly attacks again. This is only the beginning for these forces of death and destruction. They are only getting started. They sense blood in the water, and they believe that it is now their time to act and bring about the destruction of Western civilization. They have obsessed for this for generations. Look at what they do. Wherever they establish themselves, they spread misery, carnage, death, terror, and hate. Is this really the type of ideology that we wish to open ourselves to? Are these really the type of people that we want to bring into our country to put amongst our own citizens? Again, that is absolute madness. That is the pinnacle of insanity and stupidity. And that just shows you how twisted the radical and extreme left really is in this country, that they would joyously expose innocent American men, women, and children to this, just as the socialist president Francois Hollande in France opened his people through their lax immigration policies and their unwillingness to strike out against illegal aliens, allowed his people to be murdered in cold blood by savage Islamic barbarians. Think about that, folks. Left-wing progressive ideology has exposed us to this sort of chaos. And don't think that France will be an insular and discrete, isolated incident, because the forces of Islamic tyranny, oppression, and despotism have been greatly encouraged and empowered by this savage and dastardly attack on innocent men, women, and children. Think about it. They see us bowing down to them again because of the cancerous doctrine of political correctness. They are opening us to weakness and inviting terror to be a central part of our near future. But it can be stopped. It can absolutely be stopped by once again demanding that the government return to strict adherence of the principles contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution, that we go back to enforcing our borders, that we again defend the sovereignty of the United States by protecting those who are the ultimate arbiters of sovereignty within the United States. We, the people of the United States. These are unequivocal truths which are totally and completely undeniable. They are part and parcel of our true civilized society. Everything that these savage terrorists believe in is contrary to the true message of the United States. Everything that they want to force upon us is absolutely out of line with what we stand for and represent. And until we realize that, we will continue to be exposed to the danger thrust upon us by these savage Islamic killers. So to the people of France, I say that we stand with you and that we invite you to stand up against these savage killers. Oust your socialist government that allowed this to happen to you and embrace the ideology that is contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution and begin to fight back. Defend your culture, your heritage, your identity, just as we must defend our culture, character, spirit, heritage, and identity here in the United States. With that said, it is time to bring this show to a close. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, this has been your Captain, Randy Wright. I invite you to join us on our next outing and also to leave comments and concerns on either our Facebook page, our YouTube page, or our Google Plus page. Thank you again for choosing the Wright Flyer. We will see you next time.
Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty. Hurry right away, no delay, go today. Make your daddy glad to have had such a lad. Tell your sweetheart not to pine, to be proud her boy's in line. Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere, so prepare. say a prayer. Send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there, over there, over there. Send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there. Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. Johnny, show the Hun you're a son of a gun. Hoist the flag and let her fly. Yankee do or die. Pack your little kit, show your grit, do your bit. Yankees to the ranks from the towns and the tanks. Make your mother proud of you and the old red, white, and blue. Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there, over there, over there. Send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over.